stakeholders for the better. Yeah, I mean, how to stakeholders. You're briefing with that journalist.
Hey man, what's the Martin. Let's say you're streaming of until over the so. I can't imagine. Mara check out most of them. What country?
Oh,
image
negative.
It's 3 o'clock.
Receiving TSNG?
Much anticipated groundbreaking dialogue that is hosted by the Security Task Ministers. My name is Leran September, and I will be facilitating this dialogue today. I'm really delighted and honored to moderate today's dialogue under the theme Improving Access to Justice for the victims and survivors of gender-based violence and femicide. Human dignity, ladies and gentlemen, healing, safety, freedom, and equality in our lifetime. The National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence rests on these ideals, but they're not just words. They are demands of millions of women living in this country. The dialogue on gender-based violence and femicide will focus on Pillar 3 of the NSP, which speaks to justice, safety, and protection. This pillar outlines enforcement and implementation of laws and policies in responding to gender-based violence and femicide. Let me start this very important conversation by introducing our panel. Before us, we do have with us the Minister and His Facility, women, youth, and people living with disabilities. Maite Ngwane Mashagana, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And of course, we have the Minister of Police, General Mutene, who's also part of the panel that will be taking your questions, taking your suggestions, taking your views, and really engaging with this much anticipated dialogue that mentioned. And next to the Minister of Police, we do have the Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions, and that is Advocate Rodney. Sir, for your time today. And of course, we also have the Executive Director of the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, and that is Jennifer. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Now that we have the panelists sitting across the panelists, we have the stakeholders from various organizations and formations who will be adding their voices to today's discussion. They include Somka, Gender Justice, Memeza Shout. We also have with us the National Council of People Living with Disabilities, and Union will also be adding their voices to today's discussion. We also have a shutdown, of course, where so those are the stakeholders that are with us. But of course, we know that there are many more voices out there that would love to engage in this very important conversation. And we look forward to your input in this conversation of national importance. That is why we are now really calling for maximum participation far and wide, and calling on members of the public to also, make use of this platform to engage with panelists and to also engage with stakeholders through our WhatsApp line, our GBV dialogue WhatsApp line, which is 079 070 9985. That is 079 070 9985. That's the number that you can use to WhatsApp us. Please do send through your text messages as well as your voice notes, which will be heard and read in today's conversation. And the question of the day is, what do you believe still needs to be done to improve access to justice for victims as well as survivors of gender-based violence and femicide? Now, let's open the dialogue, opening remarks from the Minister of Police, General Mutene, and we'll also hear from the Minister who's sitting right beside him, Minister Maite Masharana. You can
Why are I doing that? No, man, Lorenzo, that's not the arrangement.
Thank you very much, Lorenzo. Everybody, good afternoon, Minister. I know we are from far from Manhattan. Minister in the Presidency, the Deputy Minister of Police, National Commissioner that is here, Deputy National Director of Public Prosecution, Advocate Tikok, IP Head, and all other people that are here. One stakeholder that is not mentioned is the colleague
Yeah.
that is here. Is when a young man walking along in the middle of or even yelled by me. This is a vision that all of us
Are you doing the WhatsApp thing?
Yeah.
Of course.
She's gonna sit
That's fine.
men of the society, father, a husband, and a man. It's a fact. Men coming lives in a gender-based crimes. It's often men that we do the men that we love, and men trust, and men respect. We continue to improve religious gender-based violence. It's a priority climb in the police service. As also President has declared it as a second goal. Continue to improve and intensify the combating prevention and investigation of crimes committed against women across all stages.
So that's extremely I don't know. Now I'm covered as I'm talking about the other guys. I don't know if it's come. Yeah. But on the CDC, we have mics there. So. Because you can hear me. It's not
Efficient and sensitive.
unless you take off. Okay. Sorted.
Yeah.
No, sorted. It's fine. Giving him my
Where FCS, that is the Family Violence and Child Protection Sexual Offences Unit, to investigate gender-based violence. The FCS have made significant strides in securing justice for victims, and its detectives continue to put together watertight cases that secure multiple life sentences for GBVF. Of domestic violence were reported, with 13,777 suspects charged. The first 6 months of this year saw 217 life sentences handed down, 251 accused from 200 dockets of domestic violence. While the FCS continues to be beefed up with more officers to handle the workload, officers within the unit and officers at stations continue to undergo specialized sensitivity training in order to provide a professional service to victims. The treatment of victims and survivors of GBVF with compassion and professionalism is a supremacy of precepts. However, the treatment of some components of domestic violence at police station remains a concern. Ladies and gentlemen, those officers who choose not to which is to treat victims with respect and dignity. Those officers who show this direction will have to be available at police stations. It's going to spread every number, every police station, every police station. Minister of Police, National Commission, Deputy Minister, all other deputies and divisional commissioners, all district commissioners are here. So everything is for the public out there to be able, if you are not assessing the station, you force the next week until you reach the minister and reach the commission. So it's our effort as the South African Police Service members to be accessible and make sure that every member in South Africa, every citizen has an access. This is what we try to put in the police station, supply, and everybody. And at the end of the day, we have to try to have this direction. If anyone believes they have been saved by any man or woman in blue, I also encourage you to make use of our GPDF conference line, which is 0800 333 177. I repeat, 0800 333 177. The red kits that we had a problem with, that has been resolved. We have come with a contract that is for it will last us for next 3 years. So we won't have a problem now of having the kids missing out on the station. Ladies and gentlemen, while we collectively wear our masks, sanitize our hands, and maintain social distance in order to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, the question is, what are we doing as collective to prevent the spread and ultimately bring an end to the second pandemic, which is the war on women? Those people that have declared the war on women will have to respond collectively to say enough is enough. The goal of this discussion is to respond to the vision of all women living without fear. Realizing this resolution can't be the word of the police or the court alone. This is why we must have robust engagement on this very emotive subject. I'm sure the inputs made here will further highlight issues of our own roles of us. We must play in creating a country where women are safe and free. But for us to ensure the vision is realized, enough is enough is the law must change. Change must be at our police stations from the most junior officer right up to the top management. The change must come from within our homes, our communities, and other places of schools, places of worship, educational institutions, and all public spaces. The input today should lead all of us into solutions on how we will achieve the vision as collective. We spend a lot of time and energy fighting among ourselves. Let's have one declared end of the year. That is gender-based violence and femicide. All together, we will win this one. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Minister, for those opening remarks. Quite clear that a question has been posed. What is your role, Sir Rebecca? Then hear from the Minister who's responsible for really just overseeing the response collectively to this scourge, or what is described as the second pandemic. Minister Maite, can you please take us through your thoughts this afternoon?
By me, because we are 6 appointed by the President as members of the INC, together with my honorable colleague here, Minister Fowler. May I also recognize his deputy, Mr. Kassan Matali, and the fellow panelists, ministers are also part of this panel. The panel focuses on gender-based violence and femicide and the implementation of the National Strategic Plan, which we should not be working on it as government alone, but with all the civil society organizations that are with us. What I liked is that as we were walking into this room, Minister Tele reminded me that, by the way, we should be fighting with COVID-19, not this so-called and really the real second pandemic of men making women's lives impossible in a free South Africa. Women don't do this painful thing themselves. It is men. Men. So, yes, it has to start with the communities. Yes, it has to start with all people who raised their hands and said, we will serve this government and make sure that every woman, every young girl can walk the streets of South Africa, over through South Africa, without fear of being tampered with. But it must start from the beginning. That's why we should never even remember femicides on any of this. Having said, yes, we have adopted through cabinet the national strategic plan, which we didn't sit in the smoking rooms and adopt ourselves. This has been done under the watchful eye of the president, together with civil society organizations, then thereafter brought and was well received and adopted by the cabinet. I have been requested to read out the pillars that brought in the 6 members to work together with the civil society. As and when we conclude, we need to conclude with speed. The council. It is the 6 pillars of accountability, coordination, and leadership, prevention and rebuilding social cohesion, efficient and sensitive criminal justice, adequate care, support, and healing to the victims, building women's economic power and financial access. Lastly, better information management to inform action. This is 2020 August, which today is the last day of August, that was supposed to be celebrating the Women's Month. We continue to celebrate the Women's Month in August because women must. Yes, to say no, to say enough is enough to all these things. But here we are. This year we were supposed to be focusing on what the president had before catastrophe. Focus on generation equality. That is, we no longer talk about how will the women be today, but that generation equality is those who marched more than 60 years ago, and those who are voting today, they should not go back and have to go through what we're going through. We are here to say gender-based violence and femicide should be history. We shouldn't be saying as we fight the global COVID-19. We have a second pandemic that has been hiding, that has been exposed by this COVID-19, and it's called gender-based violence and femicide. So this call to South Africans from all corners of leadership that the Honorable Minister had spoken to need to rise up, but in particular, those who have always been perpetual victims are saying they are tired of being victims because they were not spectators when the fight for freedom of this country was on. They participated because they wanted a peaceful South Africa where we do not discriminate, where love is love, and not love of show off and in the corners they get into trouble and even get killed. No masculinity, chauvinism, patriarchy, and all the ills that only looks at making women feel like they are the second city. We want to celebrate Women's Month 365 days of the year. Then in August, we just remember that there was a time on the 9th of August, 1956, that our grandmothers fought, marched, when men were thinking it's going to be too dangerous. They couldn't do this. But now that is over. Now that we are 26 years after, South Africa has declared itself as a free country. Women should also be feeling the same. Women and children. It shouldn't be. But I get a call at 12 at night from Saturday's name. I don't know what we're going to say. Now we are counting body number 30, and it's June 2020, and under lockdown. Lockdown because of COVID-19. Other countries are dealing with COVID-19. We are dealing with that, and with where should women go? We also agreed earlier on informant that actually people who need shelters are the perpetrators. Women should be left alone and be able to get on with their lives because they have done absolutely nothing to no one. Women and children need love. Civil society and all of us, from government, from all of our supporters, we are saying indeed enough. It's enough. Other countries are focusing because this was the year we're supposed to be celebrating Beijing on generation equality. Generation equality is about mobilizing society to break down whatever shackles that had been left of patriarchal practices and respect to toxic masculinity, and in all corners of our society and countries, this is what the world is doing. Can we give women a break? Can they be able to live their lives in a free South Africa? Thank you.
Very loud and clear, Minister. Can we breathe, essentially? Can women have a break? That's the question that the Minister is posing. But I want to open up this conversation now to the stakeholders that are present and to the many South Africans that are watching this through the various live streams as well as television channels that are hearing this information. This very important conversation. The Minister of Police has mentioned that, he hangs his head in shame as a man, a father, as a husband, with regards to the unacceptable levels of how women are being killed in this country. And it's important that we bring in the voices of men in this very important conversation. Now, if you allow me, I would like to maybe hear from the stakeholders that are here with us. I know that we do have something, gender justice, that has been quite vocal about the role of men in this conversation and how they're going to be able to be equipped and empowered to respond and not just be spectators, but be participants, active participants in this conversation. Can I maybe get a hand from the organization and just add to this conversation? There you go, ma'am. If you can just introduce yourself and just give us your input with this matter. Can you just pause for a minute? Can you put on your microphone, please, so we can all hear you? There you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be from Service and Justice. With this issue of GDP problem, we think that we need to engage our men to be part of the initiative, to be part of the solution. We shouldn't just decide on their behalf. So if we do things like community dialogues, where we teach our men, or we bring men what they have learned to be head of the family, to be controlling, or to be the one to protect us initially. Because most of the men, if you check, they've been willing protection as women. But seriously, we don't need protection. We just want them to let us be. We want them to be there for us, but not protect us, because they're protecting us from them as women. So we think if we engage men in our initiative, that would be the solution. To hear from them, to let them speak for themselves, to say what's wrong with them, what went wrong. We know culture, our culture actually made a lot of these men to be who they are today, but we need them to relearn and know that we women can also protect ourselves, and we don't need them to protect us. Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you so much for that contribution. Let's maybe listen to conversations that are being had outside
This room right now. I believe that we have some issues to
That was a brief one.
make use of our WhatsApp line, and that WhatsApp line can be used to interact with us, send through voice notes, send through text on the issues of the day. That is 079 Can you maybe just what's it up?
just next.
I think that the Minister of Police should influence the legislative when perpetrators, the right case matters should not be given bail, and again they should be harsh sentences given these to these perpetrators. As a lesser those who schools learning in the future. I think that is the thing that we need to also work with the Department of Justice and other relevant departments in order to come up with a plan as to how can men manage times and be cancer and be advised about how serious these crimes so that they maybe they should bring something they shouldn't be any man or any rapist matter who should just give a lesser sentence. It does like taking issues of abusing women serious. Thank you very much.
My name is Dr. Roger and what I want to expect from the Minister Police with regard to gender violence is a front action. We are tired of the authority and without any action. We would like front action and those that are involved in gender violence to be brought to book very quickly. Thank you. My name is Dr. My name is Valencia. I think the Minister of Police should address gender violence, especially when it comes to females against females, whereby the things like physical environment, and there's also gender issues men against females, which is something needs to be dealt with. There's still a stigma and also male females in our country. My name
My name is Melissa Obuatuman. I would like the Minister of Police to train more police officers on how to treat people who have cases of gender-based violence. Because most people are scared of the way they are treated when people report their cases. And also to spend more on advocacy in the communities so that people know that gender-based violence is not the right thing. It should stop. And I will not be police.
All right, maybe just pause it there for a bit and just take some responses. Many issues raised. I would like to maybe start with the constant fall that that's happening about how the court quite lenient with regard to perception that's not there. Or even take us into confidence of what is going on with regards to the course and how it is dealing with gender-based violence. Answering the question is how do we improve access to justice system for survivors for victims of gender-based violence?
I think the first thing that's really important is this issue is probably the most important prosecution. And so place the victim center processes. That is the courts on a regular basis the courts are also giving long-term rights for the perpetrators of violence against children. And we put a lot of energy both to assist the investigation and to ensure the prosecution. As far as enhancing our services are concerned, the systems, the Minister of Justice has created a dedicated section against violence. They are throughout the country. And what happens in the dedicated section against support is that we've got specialized services. So on the one hand, we have prosecutors who are specifically trained to be able to deal with these cases effectively. And the work in close partnership with the detectives of the family violence units of the police services to prepare a case for court. The court itself is sensitized to the issues relating to how these cases have been developed. So I think that's an important demonstration of how serious we are as a criminal justice system to ensure that these cases get proper attention. Of course, from time to time, people are in these things. So it always depends on the circumstances of each individual case. And I think we should remember that there's a presumption of innocence in the law, which means that when a case is presented to the court, particularly at the early stages, when a prosecutor has to get up in the first appearance, then it's very important that we have sufficient information that we can place before the court to justify giving a person justice. So this is where it comes in. Here is where we need communities to be part and parcel of working with the systems, working with the police. Because we are dependent on communities of information. We are dependent on witnesses to give witness cases. The sooner we can get that evidence, the easier it is for us as prosecutors. When we get up and say, here you are dealing with perpetrators. On the basis of this illustration, this is what the person understands. And this is the evidence that we already have collected to tell the court how serious it is. And that this person is linked to it. That I guarantee will put us in a position to ensure that she is. So in summary, the system is geared up to prioritize all these cases. We create dedicated courts throughout the country. We put dedicated services to support the victims. We need partnership with our communities.
And we need communities and businesses to work very closely to take it. So that is my view. Going forward, when we speak as a society, let us be serious about it. Let us all contribute to the solution. And I would really like us to advance the partnership we should have with the partnership we should have. And then we can be successful.
Speaking of NGOs advocates, I would like to respond to the floor as well. I know that the Full Shutdown movement has been quite vocal about some of the shortcomings of government. I mean, one of the voice notes that we heard just now was talking about very high for it without any action. What does action look like? That's a question I have in my mind. But just like hear from the floor as to what is heard about South Africans and what they want to put on the agenda here, calling for harsher sentences. Many questions posed to the police minister, saying that he needs to intervene to make sure that people stay put behind bars. Of course, the training of police officers, that's something that is always going to come up. To be able to shed more light regarding this. And of course, I will take some questions. Please feel free to raise up your hands so I can see if anybody has a comment, if anybody has a contribution to add to this discussion. But while we wait for the stakeholders to try and get on board, training of police officers, what's going on?
But I want to generally say that the responsible for training of police is my name is you. The responsible person for such the FCS, General Security, maybe they can speak for themselves. I'm speaking on their behalf all the time. They are here today. We have to tell the nation what happened.
Right, General, the question is out there. Are police trained? Are police people of actually assisting victims, survivors of gender-based violence? We've heard far too many stories of people saying they've been turned away. Police are telling us to go and sort it out with the husband when we come and report domestic violence. Tell us about the training of police officers. Can you just explain to us what the process and how many, if you even have this figure as well, how many police officers are going through this training? General?
Thank you very much, Yolanda. Good afternoon, Minister. Good afternoon, viewers. The conduct of individual police officers at the frontline service center remains a big concern. I must indicate that all police officers during their basic training program, they get subjected to gender-based related programs to ensure that as they go out there at the crime center, they are able to provide prayer service. We provide them with domestic violence act training, child justice act training, victim intelligence training, human rights person training. We and other related programs to ensure that they are empowered. After basic training as well, we also have a situation where while they are already at the police stations, we provide for them in service training programs, which is where enhanced programs that talk to that which they will do. Underlying training is provided by the children. On an annual basis, within the South African Police Service in our plan, we include quite a number of members that have been subjected in service training. As we speak, in this financial year, after having readjusted our program emanating from COVID-19, we will be training over 1,200. But also, as indicated, all members, for instance, on the 1st of October, we will be enlisting 3,000 members. Those 3,000 members will as they complete their basic training, they will be trained. I must also indicate that even at the client service center, emanating from the Java that was held in 2016, we have the 6 ministerial point plan, which involves the victims that which they need to demand at the client service center. We have posters in every police station which is intended to remind our police officers that which they need to do whenever victims of gender-based violence go through the violence. We are saying in the 6-point plan, no victim of gender-based violence will turn away, and we are also saying they will have to be treated with respect and dignity. We are also saying that they must be interviewed in a victim-friendly support service center. We also acknowledge that not all police stations might have the victim support friendly center. However, there is provision for a private room where a victim of gender-based violence is treated. We are also saying only trained experts. We have FCS units that are trained to investigate cases of gender-based violence. They are the ones who must investigate these cases, and further, victims must be referred to health facilities where they can be assessed and also assisted. Also, I think continuously, members of the South African Police Service must provide victims and their families with an update. Our training programs to ensure that we demand that we are getting trained after getting objected that despite that we are getting that we are providing. There are we have a lot of that are assisting.
Thank you so much, for your input.
Looks like every police station in the country has 28 place. A dedicated place and a dedicated person so that the first contact with the police should be friendly, social, be able to ask, because we are told by the MPA that the name or the case of the first contact. So those people should have to be educated. It should not be anybody that is in police station that is educated and people that don't have time. That's what we're working to us. All 1,153 police stations in Port Harcourt have dedicated people that will be trained, as he said, but also working with them to train the so that we don't have this clash of people not knowing what to do and people not taking the issue and the very serious.
And of course, Minister, there's a lot of accountability at station level where that doesn't happen. So, Minister is proposing a dedicated place to make sure that the system is victim-centered. I saw your hand up. How do you think this is going to actually assist the answer that we're trying to get here as to get justice for victims of gender-based violence? Do you think this will go a long way in doing that?
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. Ministers, I'm going to sigh because the reality is we can talk. And what happens as we speak now is an experience of a woman or a citizen of this country and how they're treated by law enforcement. And that's critical. Because when I walk into the station, my expectation is that I'm going to be treated with dignity and respect. The experience of many South African women who are victims of gender-based violence has not been the case. And we need to experience because we walk the walk of the women into the police stations and the courts themselves. You correct Minister, the first responder experience is going to make or break that woman's case. So when I walk into a police station and I report a domestic violence, and the police officer says to me, go back home. We can sort it out with your husband or your partner. That's my experience. It happens to the majority of South African women. When the police officer become social workers instead of enforcing the law. Because all that they're supposed to do is to take my statement and investigate. And that has to be emphasized. The second aspect of it is once that is done, we do not hear from the police for the longest of time. We are the ones who are supposed to then follow up from the police and find out how far your matter is. So there is no interaction with the complainant on the status of her case. Let's assume that you have a police officer who has done exactly that, informs you and hands over the document to the prosecutor. And that's where I'm clearly it's like we have a problem with prosecutors who do not apply their minds on the cases and are willing to not go ahead with the prosecution. And then we have a blame game being played. It's either the police or it's the prosecutor. And we have to emphasize that there's a difference between what happens in regional magistrate courts and at the high court. Because we have challenges with prosecutors and magistrates at the regional courts. The kind of treatment that citizens receive at those courts and the kind of sentences, because you have minimum sentences that are laid out in the law, but you have magistrates literally looking the other way and not implementing the law as required. So if I give an example of the case in the Free State of Naledi Shono, who was murdered by her boyfriend. If civil society did not intervene to even prepare a petition and work closely with the prosecution to make sure that bail is denied, that young man would have been given bail if we didn't get involved in civil society. Right? But there is a directive to the prosecutors to make sure that they deny bail at all times, but I find prosecutors not doing that. So I think we're doing our best at civil society level to push and ask for accountability, but we need to be met halfway by law enforcement officers, right? And deal with the hierarchy of police systems, where once you raise a problem in a particular police station, you are told that you have to wait for the head of the I mean, I've got the list of all the commissioners and everybody. Even knows me. I call her and send her cases that nothing has happened to her at a particular police station, right? And we have to escalate, right? So if you're not empowered enough or don't know ground security, your case is based in the water because you know ground security. So we are privileged enough to have like ground security numbers and we're able to escalate. But that's not how the people should be living.
And it shouldn't be like that.
It shouldn't be like that.
Right.
Yeah. So
let's get the answers for you. The points are very well documented. Let me bring in the accountability issue. You're saying that as civil society, you can't play your part, but you also need to make halfway. But accountability, who watches the people that are being enforced? We know that it is being independent and investigated by take us through your vision. You know that you've just recently been at the helm of IPID, but you know the issues very well. You've been in the sector for over 20 years. Take us through the issue. How is it that IPID can actually, bring accountability when it comes to station level, where we are seeing that police, in some instances, some police are actually failing the public.
Thank you very much. No, thank you very much for the opportunity for IP to start engaging with different community-based organizations as well as the civil society. When one came into IP, I realized that there was just a cold approach to dealing with these cases. One, I picked up that there was just a lack of transparency in how we're dealing with these cases. And good work has been done by the team itself. But the challenge is how do we begin to engage communities in what we are doing as IP. So one of the things that I've requested the team to look at is the development of the gender-based violence and femicide strategy in general that will deal with one conducting outreach programs to communities and engaging communities on cases that have been reported. And some of the cases, we realized that there are challenges in those cases. But because there wasn't any constant communication between the community and IP, people felt that IP does not exist and it does not do what it's supposed to be doing. But second to that, it's also making sure that our own investigators are also being trained. Because one of the challenges that I picked up when we were engaging some of our public prosecutors, one, it's also making sure that they're being trained on statement taking, proper statement taking. Two, it's around, I picked up in the University of KZN, there is basic forensic investigation course, which I think our team must undergo, because it's quite important that they do that, so that they can get to the depth of investigation and make sure that they provide sufficient information whenever they present their cases for prosecution. And the other important thing is, I wanted us to be so transparent, such that I have initiated the process of opening up a toll-free number for the department. The process is already underway, where communities can start engaging. Already we have engaged communities, and what I've done, in the meantime, also waiting for that process, I have given my own cell phone number, where communities are starting to engage with me. At any given time, I'm getting calls from women, WhatsApp out and say, I've been harassed in a particular station.
Rather, I think, it's going back to the advocate's point that we shouldn't get to the point where it needs to be. So maybe just take us through that number that you were talking about, so that South Africans are able to call it and make use of it. When they do find themselves in this very terrible situation, what is that number?
Currently, I'm using my number, it's 083 254 0094. The reason why I'm using this number is because currently the process is underway. So up until one of the networks has the number, is then that we can be publish the number. But what is also important, it's also strengthening the relationship with community-based structure. So we have community policing programs in various police stations. We are communicating with them. I'm just making the case. Where I worked in community structure, where I worked in community, start talking to community and us, and sitting down. Where are the challenges? If there are any challenges, but more than anything, I think that the challenges to community starts giving us tangible reasons, because along the way, you find that people come in and make this, and then the next thing is going to say, I'm not speaking for witnesses. No witnesses are coming forward. All we get is witnesses. All we find is that the person just said, I'm not going to do a particular thing. So it's important that we continue to. But what is also teaching us that I am working into it. I'm on the recruitment side of a leadership where we are targeting final year students as well as students to come and assist us in dealing with some of the network experience. And we need to use those cases, particularly the kids that can be those cases. We can then see how we can see if they are outstanding it's and then we send them
Right, thank you so much for that. Minister, I want to bring you in now and talk about specific groups of women. The NSP is quite clear that all women should enjoy being serviced by the criminal justice system, right? But we know that there's specific groups of women, such as women with disabilities and trans women, face challenges in accessing the system. How can we make sure that these services are accessible to people that are not living in the urban area, for example, so living far flung, but also the fact that people have certain disabilities and they're not heard as they should purely because of that. Take us through what's been happening and what's been done.
All South African women from all walks of life, in particular the women with disability and LGBTQI, plus should not fear us. People who are sitting here on the front row are not here to service themselves. They're supposed to be on the side of the people. But for the people that understand with the ministry and the presidency, we have even gone to, yes, we now have the NSP. Let's have international a committee. What do we do the news? Minister Trailer, Minister of Police, Minister of Tourism, Minister of Public Service and Administration, because there was a pressure raised earlier on about how gender-based violence still prevails, even in the civil service. Minister Zulu, Minister of Social Development, Minister of the Way, because we need money, Minister of Mula, because the police bills, but answers almost 50% of what Nadidipo was saying here needs to be fast-tracked, if not even more. Minister of Mula, Minister of Justice, we make 49% of that, which should be soon, and very soon, and really late. A cancer that must make 49, 51% members of the civil society that makes a country. So that we should not continue making our people feel they owe government something when government owe them a service. I just come back from Britain. Minister, I can tell you that I have been to the FCS center. I visited to a hospital for COVID meeting purposes. I visited the biggest clinic I've never seen before. But I've also insisted on visiting a police station. We didn't tell them we were coming. But
what did you find? What did you find?
Well, what I found was that which is saying I can attest to, because the FCS unit has been helped, and there are more than 18, 10 were out working on how they should help women and little kids. I can say now, last year I visited the police station and I thought I want to go back to sleep, but now I can say things are beginning to happen. But we need to launch us, the country, like yesterday. Even the president is becoming impatient. Where is this real partnership between civil society to do it very hard and government that is paid to do it? Do that which we should be doing. Lastly, every agency, be it of government, every department, every company need to have GBDF sign on, so that we know what we're doing. We ask our questions, and this is an instruction from the president, so that there is none that I can and come to say, we will go back to the report stories of go discuss it at home. So that you can hear.
All hands on deck, essentially, Minister. All hands on deck. I know that you've been itching to respond to some of the voice notes that we presented, but also the advocate sentiments of Minister. But I do want to open the conversation. Let's run the risk of just speaking amongst ourselves. We have advocates that are listening to this conversation far and wide, and of course using the WhatsApp line 079 070 9985. Colonel, surely there are some more voices that are out there. Let's take a listen maybe and also just read us context as to what is being said around this topic.
With the text messages. One comes from Chavo, says, a brother to UCC was brutally murdered by a boyfriend on the 26th of February 2019, that 13 times. This case is dragging, still no justice. The femicide case has not been prioritized by the state. They keep on postponing justice and fraud. And another one says, what have you done since the murder of women last year in September? What measures have changed or been implemented by the police in the country? Please provide us with proof of documents and policy. And the third one says, my suggestion is urgent steps that the SAPS should take to improve the status of GDP. Process every piece of DNA evidence from each crime. Number two, process DNA evidence within hours, not months or years. Match the perpetrators between different cases and present all cases together to ensure serial rapists, killers, and attackers get the maximum sentence. And finally, train, and more training for yourselves and members in the CSC.
All right, Bill, maybe a voice note or two?
Go to a voice note.
Hi, my name is Lucas Musago from Seconia. I think gender-based violence is a serious crime in our country, and we need to make sure that we work together with DVD. But most importantly, the Minister of Police must ensure that we create a specialized, dedicated unit that deals with gender violence.
I'm working for JCPS. My answer is based on my experience. As I said, I'm working for JCPS. I am working for a broken organization which serves women face tragedy at home and the following day. And so there's still cases that are exactly like what is happening at home. So I don't think those people are strong enough to deal with the same thing that they are dealing with at home. My input will be, can you give me the priority to offer assistance to all women who are working for themselves? Even if it's no specific things, then we just have the workshop, even if it's once a year, so that people can come out. Because I know that at some point you cannot just come out and say because this problem is home. And then when we deal with the case like that, you will end up being greater and you cannot even focus and give the right input or give the right solution because you are taking your side because you try to hide.
You could hear the anguish in her voice, she's a SAPS member. She's asking for support from the service. Maybe let's start answering that question. Is there enough for service members to handle these cases? Because she talks to the fact that, abuse could be happening at home and she's coming here having to service someone who's been abused. Well, she's experiencing the very same thing at home.
Again, people responsible for that I just want to go a little bit across the board here. Advocating here, song is here, condolences here in the room, other cities and organizations. So I'm looking at these figures. 18,231 rapes. They happen in residences, in family, friends, homes, neighbors, and to the people that are known to people. So this is 18,000. This is the last year. So which means that why do we give everybody every society must be brought on board on this piece. Not only that, we find that even at schools, places like educational institutions. Last year, 380 people were raped at institutional education institutions. So this what this member of the JCPS, that the commissioner is here, the head of HR is here, they have to find, but it's not the only subs member that as they go to work to support women that have been abused in whatever work environment themselves, they had the same experience last night. So this internal empowerment of organizations must be a proper, just imagine the female fascist that is trying to raise case, she was raped previous night at sex. The advocate that is representing was raped. So it's not just out there. You start from within, and these issues and these problems must be really brought in and empower everybody. And as you see, this 18,000, these are not safe sanctions, these foods. These residents are not safe. So we just need to work on them. And Commissioner is here. This myself, I'm glad to see this member. But this member must be the point A of all other members. I know there are structures that are dealing with members, but this tells you that those structures are not adequate as you hear. Last point, question of name. First, there's a person who's in life sentence was arrested in life sentence. But we do want to emphasize the point to say it doesn't have much. Doing life sentence, where is women? So we have to work hard on prevention rather than protection. And I think it's for all of us to work on that. Get the structures, get the programs that will work hard on prevention of these matters. Maybe 2 minutes or 1 minute abusing the HR of the South African police must tell us what are the problems. But more than knowing those problems, they need to be enhanced for this fact that this member says so. As you can say, she's really serious. You can hear from her voice that she's crying for assistance herself. Thank you.
Minister, you do speak to that, and we will definitely get more from the JCPS regarding, are our applications up to the task? Do we have programs in place to really give us the support that's necessary? But before we go there, you spoke about, all hands on deck from all the various, formations, and Minister, prevention is better and cure. Let's maybe hear from the likes of Controversy. I know that they are here representing, and just adding to the discussion, possibly, or the fact that there's organizations that are advocating for women to empower themselves physically. I know that Away.org is here. I know that Women's and Shout is here. Let me take your hand, ma'am. What's your contribution to this conversation? What are you doing? What can you do to make sure that your head is on deck?
Thank you so much, honourable ministers and stakeholders. My name is Anne-Marie Pereira. I'm from Manesa. I'm here on behalf of Tuli Tetwa, who is a normal citizen who 7 years ago decided to stand up and do something. She was and I think what we're getting from this conversation that's coming through is that we as civil servants and communities want to meet this community even more than halfway to solve this problem of gender-based violence. From women who have lost our sisters due to gender-based violence, we've been rape victims ourselves. And from the history where Tuli came from and myself, we believe that innovation is a very important thing that needs to be looked at to make it easier for women in communities to reach out to the South African police services, to the support within their communities, social workers, And that support structure that is not always readily available in the most vulnerable communities. One of the elements that we order used. They have taken the time, they have taken the effort to get a protection order, but that piece of paper when they get home means absolutely nothing. If the local policemen on the ground, the community policing controllers, the neighbors, family and friends don't know that I've been to court today, my life is in danger, I'm coming home with a piece of paper, but nobody can help me because nobody is aware. Can we look at innovation that would allow a woman who gets a protection order to get firstly the tools when she gets a protection order to activate herself to protect herself against it? That's in the form of whether it is mobile tools or handheld tools. But secondly, when you get that protection order, there's people around you to be notified. So that your local police station is aware that these men and women in my neighborhood has got protection orders, we need to be on top of it. If something happens to her, she should be able to press a face button and people and community members and the law enforcement needs to be notified and they need to know this is a high risk case.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that contribution. Yes, sir.
Sorry, Chair. Okay, I think we're not to push it through then. I think we can push it.
I think you can just interject.
Mercedes, we'll just put you on hold and then as soon as someone is done speaking, we'll put you on here so that you can ask your question. Sorry? It's kind of one of the members who is speaking. You can just hold someone can ask your
I was very concerned is that there's an escalation.
We'll interject and then ask her if you can ask a question.
And brutality, the extent of brutality is increasing. And we are asking ourselves the question, what could be the causality of this situation? I live in one area. And there used to be one community under the slopes of the social media. That order, that way of no longer we have seen a lot of wrong behavior, particularly cooking. And this escalation is also okay in that context. The great amount of the use of alcohol as well as drugs is a serious problem that we face. And this could be just one of the reasons for the escalation. You've got the regulations that we must close the tent, and we know that the majority of the police stations are located in towns, but in rural areas, there's quite very few villages that have got police stations. And the Traditional Council doesn't have that authority to ensure that it makes everyone comply with the regulations. So people will drink until the early hours of the morning, and so on and so forth. And in the middle of that, Honorable Minister, you see exactly what we are talking about in that context. In our engagement, therefore, Minister, with the teams, the National Commissioner has promised us to deploy that in our respective traditional council. We can't wait for that to happen because we know that it will help and it will reinstate the place of the traditional council, ensuring that we bring the order in those communities. And secondly, Minister, this issue of training can be extended to the traditional council. Because remember that the rural communities account for almost half of the population of the country. And you can't do this work alone with the police. We ought to assist this. And we, as the leadership of the institutional leadership in this country, we offer that assistance to you at no cost to you. All we need is to ensure that we extend the only cost we train. So we're saying that help us with that, and we can try and assist
but also the reinstatement in certain functions and powers in the social council to assist you to really administer it, because you know, Minister, it's even difficult. You go and watch someone who is your relative, who is selling drugs to the community. You can see in the faces of the young men in our community, these young men are high, day in and day out. The only thing that they are looking at is to victimize their counterparts who happen to be late. And therefore, we have a difficulty if you can arrest the issue of the abuse of alcohol and the abuse of drugs. And for people to be allowed to sell drugs freely in our community, totally unacceptable. Would like to work with it. So this is really frustrating. So I'm saying from those two, we think that we like what is happening today, but worry about it. This particular dialogue must have stayed to the provincial level, level, to the local level. We must be there on the ground. And we like the fact that whenever there is a crisis anywhere in our community, you are the first person to come and the last person to leave. And that is leadership capability, which we salute and we acknowledge and say things happen even at other levels.
Thank you so much.
That would be our submission.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your contribution. Are we able to maybe get a response on this issue of protection orders? And then also maybe hear from the detectives of the South African Police Service. Are detectives in the South African Police Service that are tasked to investigate these crimes up to the task? We'll hear from you, General Mr. after this, but are you able?
Apologies, Chair, for interrupting. We do have a caller on the line waiting to ask a question.
All right, let's take that call.
Good afternoon. Yes, can you hear me? Yes, it's Mercedes, the Senator from the Parliament. Minister Becky Pele, I just want to say that, the coronavirus is not over. There are many people who no longer wearing their masks, but one of the shocking things is when you see police not wearing their masks. So I don't know if they've been told that they shouldn't wear masks anymore, and I'm talking here from experience, even in Parliament. I spoke to a few police and said, but why are you not wearing masks anymore? The coronavirus is still there. And I'm not going to blame the police because the question is where are the compliance officers? And also who is telling them? And police only say they're taking sanctions. So that is a serious issue. The coronavirus is still there. And what should I do tomorrow if I go to work and I see a police not wearing a mask? What should I do? Do I lay a complaint against the minister, or who do I lay a complaint against? And secondly, especially in the public, because these are people who work in the public. And then secondly, you recently released a written reply to a parliamentary question about domestic violence, where you indicated that between March and June, there were about 13,000 people who were arrested and 14,000 were prosecuted. I don't know if I might have missed in this briefing, but I would love to hear the latest figures. And if you still do not have it, you can't give it to me at this stage. If you can be emailed to me, please. I would like to know what is the latest now at August.
Mercedes, thank you for your questions. Mercedes, I have to stop you there because what you're doing now is really derailing the conversation. We are talking about gender-based violence. We're talking about access to justice for victims and survivors of gender-based violence. And this is not the question that we were hoping that we would get from members of the public. That is why I'm going to, and the members of the media, that is why I'm going to remind you that we are having a conversation about gender-based violence that's hosted by the ministers in the Secretary of Justice. However, those are important questions that if you do get the time, you will have to answer to them. And we'll just leave it as that. Mercedes, thank you so much for your call.
Okay, but that's not what we were told. We were not told that we cannot call in. I've been watching and this media briefing, so
it's a dialogue. It's a dialogue, Mercedes. I really hope that you can, expand with us, share with us as advocates we're doing via our WhatsApp line, as well as giving us their takes and their comments, and of course engaging with stakeholders that are present here and engaging with the panelists that are before us. But we will answer those two questions that you posed to us, and thank you so much for calling in. Advocate, can we just go back to the issue of the day, which is something that has been posed and it is coming up time and time again, which is protection orders. You know, women are dying with protection orders in their hands. That's one of the articles I've read of recent times. Take us through the Department of Justice and the protection orders. What's the story there?
No, I think the issue is not the protection order. I think the issue is once a person has a protection order, goes back to the same environment, that is where the challenge arises. But if I understood the proposal from the colleague earlier, is that we must look at a mechanism that can assist the person who has a to get the response from the
has taken place. So I think a lot of the work in the advisory, it says it's a dialogue. Because we allow members of the media to actually come in and ask questions in the because some of the questions are not really relevant during the meeting. Because the main thing that we're discussing
there are two.
Yes,
So
but
there
there
are
was
some.
another briefing. I think there was another question that that had nothing to do with this.
Do we really do something that isn't really two of these things? And there's a that's
okay, can we then later on put you to the spokesperson to ask a question? No, we know the media is allowed to ask questions, but the delegates of the question
judicial officer issues the order. So the court has agreed that
no, but in certain media briefings, you obviously have to ask certain questions with regards to what they're discussing.
To support getting an order to limit the rights of
he must have briefly touched on it then. Briefly.
So the question is, when that order is breached,
I don't think it is.
And to strengthen. And perhaps in a local precinct, we have a list of people today.
Okay, but they are answering your question about gender-based violence. That's what they one of the questions that you did ask.
What are you arguing is supposed to have?
I can't really listen right now because I'm right on the phone. I can't really listen right now because I'm answering your call. Yes.
In the street.
Okay.
People should know.
Thank you.
There's a person in this street living at half of the time. Are we saying enough? So those are issues really and just on the conditional course, I think there is an area that the department is looking at in terms of the community.
Yes.
In the prosecution, we also want more closer. So as we speak, we develop the community prosecution, which is going to mean that we're going to work very closely with our communities and identify particular issues that are happening in the community. So the community cases of domestic violence is a problem. And we want to say, how does the prosecution engage very closely with all the whole things? And we put strategies in place to address that. When those cases come to our court, they must receive proper so that we can see the crime. So I'm saying the two are introduced, the community forces and the community prosecution. Those are concepts that we currently discussing.
Again, advocates talking about the fact that the societal problem that needs societal solutions. Advocate Musikili asked African police officers, especially detectives that are tasked with investigating these crimes up to task.
Thank you, Lorenzo. My response to the question would be yes and no. Yes, in the sense that as the organization, it took a stance and the National Commissioner instructed in 2016 when the clusters were reduced that FCS units are not going to reduce. When we did re-establish the units in 2010, there were 176. They have since expanded to 185 units to ensure that we do not find each one police station or one unit having responsible for more than 7 police stations. So the units are remaining when we are currently talking about the districts. On top of that, the establishment of those FCS units have since seen the employment of the social workers within the FCS units so that they are within reach at each unit to deal with the cases that will come, incidents that will come within the FCS units and to assist victims that will require that specialized focus of the social worker. These people that I'm referring to are professional social workers. They will get police training after them being employed into the service. So we have social workers within each FCS unit. The 9 additional units that were established was to deal with your serial cluster cross-station serial rapists, to deal with the issues of child online molestation that we commonly know it as child pornography or cyber, the electronic crime focus of these cases as they are coming. The minister has indicated the number of cases that we are having. My no will be, it will not be enough to have the numbers that we're having within these units because cases are flowing. They are overwhelming to be dealt with by the numbers that we are having. But the focus for the organization in this financial year is to beef up specialized units, not only murder and robberies, but FCS is on the top of the priorities of the organization, and it has been in the top priority of the organization for the past 4 years. That the beefing up, the training of the FCS unit is a priority when the training happens, including that the numbers of investigators that should be placed at the FCS unit are going to be prioritized and increased. For the past financial year, 312 members were placed. They are currently at the mentorship program. On the completion of that basic training, they will be carrying dockets within the FCS unit. I will not talk to the statistics in terms of the number of life sentences that we have achieved so far, but I think it's worth mentioning that as we are struggling, and if one case is one too many, but the little that we are able to push through the courts, so far to date, from the 1st of January until the end of June this year, we have seen 151 persons receiving life sentences through the investigation that was done by the FCS unit. This is too little if you look at the number of cases, but it is what we are saying. If we are able to push these cases to get to court, we want sentences. Advocate Peacock earlier indicated the issue of the Tutela sentence. That as a country, we took a stance as well to say, let us have this one-stop sentence. Ideally, what was intended to be happening in the Tutela care centers is that when the victim gets to a Tutela center, all the services will be provided at that room, being it the taking of the statement, the examination of the doctor, the social worker, the court preparation, everything will be dealt with at one center. And when it gets to court, we know that we are having the victim that is okay. My appeal to the communities as well is that let us support the victims and come forward as witnesses to assist the victims of crime to solve the cases. We often go on reward because nobody wants to come forward to assist the victims of crime. Hence, I was saying earlier, yes, but it is still not enough. The numbers are still very high on the cases that are reported. We have had that since the beginning of this discussion. The number of investigators will never be enough. But we do have capacity as well at the police station for other gender-related cases that are dealt with at the police station level.
Gerald, thank you so much for that information.
Sorry, Chair.
and also just taking us into your confidence about some of the challenges that are being faced regarding the investigative leg of the SAPS. Let's take a call. Is it a call, Mafikani?
Yes, sorry to interrupt. It is a call. This is Cindy Siwe Shoba from Daily Maverick. You can go ahead, Cindy Siwe.
Hi. I just have a number of questions regarding, firstly, has the DNA testing lab been set up in the Eastern Cape? I was reading up in the 1.6 billion rand plan, era, that the DNA testing lab was supposed to be set up, and whether that's been done. Secondly, can I ask if the National Register of Sex Offenders has been made or will be made public? I know there's been quite a debate about that of late. My third question has to do with three specific bills that I think are currently in Parliament. One of them is to do with the National Registry of Sex Offenders, but the others have to do with bail and parole, the criminal law and sexual offences and related matters bill, the domestic violence bill, and the criminal matters and remedies bill.
Is that it, Siniswe?
Yes.
That was a quick question. Thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for those questions. Let's get straight into it, Advocate. Maybe you should come light regarding that.
The National Commission must say something on the protection, because it's not just the question of the. So police actually are playing a bigger role in the protection when the woman has been granted, but the police undermines it. I think the National Commission will have to be given the opportunity to say what do we do as a service.
Absolutely. Maybe let's just start there, Commissioner. Are you just able to let us know about the role of the police officers and police service when it comes to the enforcement of protection orders?
Okay, thank you very much, Minister. I think the first thing is that each and every police station has got a domestic violence register. So the moment any member of the public or victim is in possession of the domestic violence of the protection order, then that particular person must immediately interact with the police station. And at the police station, we have got dedicated members of the CSC who must then take that particular protection order and then into the register. And they must then arrange and make all the necessary arrangements to make sure that this person is safe, including the safety include the place where this person is staying, who is she staying with, and how is she going to do it. But I then want to come back to advocate before and begin to say this person can be anywhere in court, and the court can be anywhere when this person obtains the protection order. Now, the technology then comes in, and that's where and when this person must, within a very short space of time, link up with the police station. With technology, it can be done immediately. But what we have done again from the police, we have introduced the so-called online policing strategy. And with the online policing strategy, we are then maximizing the time. I need to go into the internet to set up something. Better online, we also want to do the education. Yes, I think one of the I think what we are doing now, I think it's
disease database where you want the basic policy
So basically, we'll be in technology, to fight the scourge of gender-based violence. That's something that I'm sure will happen in a lifetime. It definitely should happen in all our lifetimes. But let's go back to the question that Henry posed at the
The caller referred to Emma.
Yes.
What had happened since the president had spoken to this? But 1.6 billion rand. That was before COVID-19. The answer is yes, substantial resources to tackle gender-based violence and femicide have been committed. And between that time and before we got into March 2020, the approach was to continue harnessing roles, responsibilities, resources, and commit stakeholders across different tiers of government and civil society to come together and shout. I like this mass of shout. Yes, these figures of elevation of some of the activities that the police, the NPA, and refer to comes from that resources of energy, including by certain I said anyway, how we play a mission that the should be the ones who not those who have been wronged. President in his speech said, we've been able to increase the number of shelters and care centers for survivors. To improve the capacity of police to deal with crimes of sexual violence and to improve services to women and children who have to go through the criminal justice system. Anyone knows a question about a civil servant who is himself abused. This question came about a year before COVID. We were matching journalism from the city center to the independence. All around the women, very senior, stood up and said, no, boxing. Can you please come help me where I live? Because I am being accused by my partner. As I said, I saw two of them. They are on their own because they should have continued to keep it the pain secret. So this indeed need societal or the society to get together. Be it from the village, from the city, from the small town. Ever brought us some resources, not enough, but it only would go much further. If there is change that comes also from within. The silence must be broken. But when I break the silence, I should know it is said that there is support around me. South Africa is ashamed of what's going on in South Africa. Can this shame please stop? And it has to stop right here, right now. It is one side. It's name. It's misogyny. It's is about punishing women since they are there. So everybody is doing it. But can we also have change coming from within? I was saying to victims, I attended some places, something yesterday, different nation. And then I felt like I want to scream. Because I saw masculinity. I saw masculinity. And this is what we need to stop.
But
And rightfully so, Minister. Toxic masculinity is one of the causes of
this must, when we say we are, when we started with the lockdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, we're not saying we're finishing COVID-19. We are still bearing and we're bearing more. We should mask, we should sanitize, we should wash. We spoke of a pandemic that is affecting the whole world and South Africa, and the pandemic of gender-based violence and femicide affecting South Africa. But this is not a joke. People are being buried every day because of COVID-19. Can we please rise to the occasion? If tomorrow there's a meeting that says, no, we're going to level 1, it doesn't mean lower your guards. I visited in the
Minister, I have to intervene because we really want to get all the voices. So I'll give you a couple of more seconds to
the
make
last
it
second is in the bank. I also visited the hospital. There are still people who are still on ventilators, and they are dying. So it's not a joke.
COVID-19 is real. South Africa, be safe. That's really the message from Minister Maite Mashabane. I really want to answer these questions that we've fielded, but also I want to get the conversation to come to a close, unfortunately. It's close to 2 hours of very robust, progressive conversation that we've been having here. Can we maybe just speak to the bills that have been asked, Advocate? There also is a question about the Eastern Cape having its own forensic labs. I think we can also answer to that. So the bills, give us more clarity.
So the 3 bills referred to have been prioritized within the justice cluster. These bills have already passed through the DGs of all the departments, and currently it's in process to cabinet. It's being done on a fast track, and it's really going to assist in all the areas that have been discussed today, including strengthening the bail legislation. So it is on the fast track as we speak, and a lot has been done to try and push the bills through as fast as possible. On other areas, I think
All right. Maybe just take. Maybe what we can do now is just work towards a close. And I really feel like we have stakeholders that are here. We haven't heard their voices as yet. Are we able to maybe just take the parting shots that are talking to a solution driven approach? We have posed a question, which is how can survivors as well as victims of gender-based violence and femicide access the justice system? I'm really hoping that we could just expand this conversation, maybe just take up some solutions. Is there a hand up there? Very good. You can go ahead. You can go ahead, sir. Yes, you can go ahead and put on your microphone. Thank you.
Thanks. sorry to forward you. The gender-based violence have been discussed for a very long time. And I think as farmers, having looked at what was discussed, having looked at the possible solutions that were given over the years, I think we are still discussing the same. However, as NAFO South Africa, we are putting together a report which we will obviously send to the civilian sector within the police. We have found the following. Number one, that the women widows on farms have become absolutely vulnerable in the sense that they cannot access the justice system clearly because they are on farms. And we would want to request, therefore, that this sector, particularly widows, farmers, be brought to a level where they can actually receive assistance. However, the solutions, because we don't have time, we thought that maybe when people get married at the level of home affairs, a contract must also be signed that those who get married would commit to the fact that they will not, in fact, be found guilty of gender-based violence, both sides, men and women. We believe that, secondly, the Constitution of South Africa is not even known to many rural dwellers, particularly on farms. And we were thinking that as a solution, that maybe government would need to look at whether the non-statutory forces, that are, many of them are not working, would be deployed and made as a project to continue to come and really assist in the violence against women and children of our country. At last, we are of the firm view that notwithstanding the fact that we blame the police, but I think no one is telling us about the pressures that the police are going through, about the fact that they are also killed, and about the disrespect that they get every day from communities. Now, with absolute respect to everyone involved in the discussion today, how do you expect a constable that must protect our lives? I come from farms. I don't come from farms. My farm is 47 years, it's 43 kilos from the station. But I'm saying, look at the police as well. I'm sorry I talked for a long time, but we sympathize with those who have been killed. We sympathize with women. But I'm here to talk on behalf of the women on the farms that are not being given the attention they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Your contribution is valuable to us. I will also take the last round of hands. We are coming to a close, as I indicated. Some solutions to what we are putting across. We all have the right to access justice, more so the ones that have been wronged and are really seeking justice. Are we able to maybe have one more solution? Then I just throw it back to the floor. Oh, is there, okay, we've got some solutions from members of the public out there. Colonel, maybe, can you just take us through
Short and sweet, please.
Just the one from Advocate T. Komane from Free State, the prosecutor, welcome. He says a victim-centered approach to effectively respond to GBV is to connect the victim to the engine room of the criminal justice system. In the same way, bail standby lists containing names and contacts of prosecutors are placed at police stations for after-hours bail application. The same approach must be adopted for gender-based cases. A GBV standby list of names of trained prosecutors must be generated and placed at all police stations for the following reasons. Number one, once a GBV case is registered, prosecutors can be alerted immediately and already start guiding investigations, almost like the former Scorpions model. To enable prosecutors to gather information early and involve victims on issues of bail. And thirdly, to enable prosecutors to assess early if there is a need for referral to places of safety and assess any of the victims' consent, and to enable prosecutors to assess maintenance needs of the victims and ensure that orders of maintenance are obtained sooner. And lastly, to arrange counseling and proper handling of cases at the initial stages to ensure speedy finalization once the matter is trial ready.
Advocate Kumane, thank you so much for your contribution. Those are noted, and I think Advocate Peacock, you maybe just give us just touch on if that is, feasible at any point. But I also just wanted to conclude and in our parting shots, Menta saying, you had a very lengthy and very direct way of showing us your plan for the iPad. But what's your parting shot with regards to the conversation? We are, looking at ways to improve access to the system. Maybe just give us a parting shot.
Thank you very much. I would emphasize, let communities be involved. We want credible witnesses. We want people to come forward with information that is going to assist us building. But more than anything else, is the speedy prosecution of this case.
Thank you so much for that. Are we able to maybe get an indication of Advocate Komane's contribution? Advocate Peacock? He's made a lot of suggestions, and this is what we're seeking for solution. Are there people?
Yes, I'm listening closely, and I think we do have, as you correctly says, we do have prosecutors who are on standby on a 24-hour basis, particularly around issues of bail. And of course, prosecutors are available. But I think the idea of creating a closer link with GBV cases is a good one, and something that we certainly will have to take forward. And my parting shot is just that I would want to emphasize the partnerships with the communities and with the NGOs in society, and really agree with the point that we need everybody to be on board, everybody to work together to try and address this problem.
All right, Mr. Taylor. Nafu made very important points about being worried about the their state of mind, their state of well-being. Your parting shot with regards to the discussion today, and also who's taking care of the ones that are taking care of the nation?
Well, my parting shot is that to start with, I will never say no to the prosecution guided investigation. It makes life much easier, and it carries the war between prosecution and police. So if they can be encouraged, the national commissioners here, it's with the But my last parting shot is that the organizations that are here, there is this question of talking and rhetoric. I want to stand here and invite that let's work on that rhetoric together to concretize it. To say, this is rhetoric, this is what we're supposed to do. Get the state resources, do 1, 2, 3. So this should not be the end, it should be the beginning. Invite us, if we're there, or we are available to one another to work to concretize, because there are things that we'd like to raise ourselves, condolence, the advocate with them. There are many cases that are withdrawn. It is a problem, the cases that are withdrawn. And then we need to work on those. Who puts the pressure for people to withdraw? Our friends, our families, Induna controller, Amako was the controller, that they put the case to say, you are bringing embarrassment in this house. It can't be your uncle that you take to court. It can't be your father. I'm dealing with the case that I got yesterday. This young woman was raped by father from the age of 7. She's 16 today. And why so long? Because
It's just a plan.
Madam Chair, Minister, before I come to you, because I want you to close
I
this
was
up
a fact check. Interesting.
the empowerment of the very, very and I want you to just ponder on that. I want to uphold from I think the youngest from what I believe is the youngest audience member here. Give us your name and your contribution. You've got the stage. Put in your mic.
I'm Caesar Kene Langa, and I was saying, why isn't the police at the school to protect the children at school? Because children also get kidnapped there. So I suggest police should be there to protect them because there's no one there to protect them.
Caesar, thank you so much for that question. I think it needs an answer, Minister. Why are police not in schools to protect young children?
Second, all this will stop in your lifetime, and generation equality will become a reality. If we all pledge that we are moving as all represented here and many outside, but this shame, it's shameful. For your sake, Sister, we must all pledge that as we work for the new normal that came with COVID, we must also come with a new normal that comes with South Africa not just feeling ashamed of the things that South Africans are doing. Because earlier on I said, I got a call at 12 midnight from Minister Terry asking me, what must he do with somebody who kills his wife at 12 midnight and locks the keys and disappears? Because children, Zagel and them will not sleep in the same room with mother and father. So my last word, prevention, comes from change, and change comes from within. South Africa will become a very progressive country, economically, socially, if we give access to resources to women, as we said before. If we work on preventative, you spoke of solutions. I think you were speaking to preventative actions. Certain things we can just start doing. It mustn't be as a general 6, I'm using your name, who get raped by the same person who should protect her until she's 16. Certain things can stop, but we all could not start because we prevent them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. Sizagele, you don't have to live in fear, and I think that's the message that I'm hearing from the Minister, and this is why we are having this very important actions to make sure that this doesn't filter through to other generations. It is realized, as you've said, Minister, in your lifetime, where a woman can enjoy the stars without fear of being raped, without fear of being abused, without fear of being harassed, without fear of being murdered. It really has been an honor and privilege to host and to facilitate this conversation. But it doesn't end here, colleagues. It doesn't end here, Minister. It doesn't end here, members of this of the country. The conversation can be extended to all our virtual platforms, but also it is the onus is on us to expose the violence, to expose the perpetrators, to assist the victims, to ensure that victims and survivors of gender-based violence and femicide really get the justice that they deserve. Let me just run through some of the telephone lines that we have available. There is recourse if you feel that you did not get the dignity and professionalism at police stations. Please make use of our JCPS complaints line, which is 0800 333 3177. That's 0800 333 3177. And of course, victims of gender-based violence can call a 24-hour toll-free number, which is 0800 428 428. This will be facilitating the investigation and further handling of your case. Let me leave it here with these three words: humanity, dignity, healing, safety, and of course, freedom and equality in our lifetime. Those are the words that the industry rests on. And I really want to close this dialogue and thank everybody for your participation. Thank you to the panelists. And of course, thank you to the media and the South Africans out there that have really contributed to this very important discussion. As I said, it doesn't end here. We need to really continue this conversation until we make sure that every woman can walk in the street at night without any fear. With that, that shows the dialogue that we've had.
So what can we improve on next time if this type of dialogue happens?
Sure.
But you don't know